Now we rejoin the crew of the Carolina Williamsport, consisting of Captain Koss, first mate Pick, his son Little Pick, the 12-year-old teamster Tommy, and our naturalist out-of-work vagabond turned canal boat yeoman, John. If you didn't hear the beginning of this story of these travelers of the C&O Canal that we started in a previous episode, please refer to that episode, and it's on the introduction of the C&O Canal, and that might help paint the picture a little bit better for our story here. Now, with the canal boat slowly traveling down the man-made canal ditch, the towpath inched ever so close to the mighty Potomac River to their right as Captain Koss raised up his brass horn and blew into it with a loud bellow, a sign that they were approaching another lift lock. In the distance, John could see the lock keeper scurry to set the lock for the approaching boat, but something was different about this lock. It was bigger. With the help of the tall and slender free African-American first mate, the captain properly slid the heavily loaded canal boat into the lock as the doors closed behind them. Water was removed, which lowered the boat as usual, but this was slightly different. Tommy had to move the mules across the mule bridge to the left side of the canal ditch, and then John noticed that they were lowering far lower than usual towards the river. So once the water was on the same level as the lower portion of the canal, John realized what was happening. The mules pulled the boats into the wide open waters of the flooded section of the Potomac River. No longer were they in the restricted canal prism surrounded by cliffs and trees. They were on the open waters of the river, a place known as Big Slackwater. "Let out the ropes a little," commanded Captain Koss to Pick. The Carolina of Williamsport eased out away from the towpath that was now on their left, giving it plenty of room as the boat seemed to stretch out its legs in the openness of the slackwater. Tommy and the mules were on a man-made ledge held up by stone walls next to this big rocky cliff dotted with cave entrances. The rope stretched from the boat to the mule team, allowing Tommy and his beast of burden to propel the canal boat downriver. The wind picked up as the crew navigated the human-controlled natural waterway of the river, and the wind did not affect the heavily loaded coal-filled Carolina of Williamsport. However, many empty canal boats that were unloaded in Georgetown and now moving upstream were flailing in the river as the wind blew the light-loaded boats and made it difficult for the crews to control their watercraft. Passing by beautiful natural sights such as cliffs, the Virginia farmland on the far side of the river, and a gristmill nestled in an opening of the bluffs of Maryland, the nearly 3 miles of the river was up. It was time to re-enter the canal prism and give up the sight of Big Slackwater. The canal boat eased down a small man-made ditch to the massive door of an inlet lock. The boat entered and was lowered into the canal ditch while Tommy and the mule team once again crossed over to the right side of the canal boat. The majestic journey on the Slackwater for John was over for now. Now, I'm sure there will be other opportunities for him to experience a similar situation as the Carolina Williamsport encounters other slackwater sections of the C&O Canal as she journeyed to her destination. So here on the C&O Canal, we are at lock number 42. Lock number 42 is actually a lock right ahead of the river inlet lock that we're going to see here in a minute. And this is actually where the prep of getting ready to move onto the river occurs. And you can tell by the mule bridge. So if you look down that way, there's a berm on either side of the lock that's a little bit higher. That is actually where there was a bridge for the mules to cross over. Usually, the towpath was always between the canal prism or the canal ditch and the river. However, when you're going to be moving the canal boats onto the river, you needed to shift the towpath where the mules actually traveled to the other side of the boats. the canal boats. So this is where that happened. They would travel across this bridge, they would go over on the left side of the boat going down river, and then in preparation of entering the river up ahead and be propelled down the Slackwater section. So though our journey today actually started at the canal access located at McMahon's Mill at mile 88.1, just downriver from us here, I wanted to start my video at lock 42 and lock 41 here at mile marker 88.9. So lock 41 is actually a very special lock, as it is a river, it's a river access lock. When building the C&O Canal, many logistical issues occurred, including obstacles such as steep cliffs and mountains that bordered the Potomac River. The canal was to run parallel to the river, so it always had a water source. However, with a cliff and high elevations making up the riverside, it was impossible to run a man-made ditch next to the river in these particular areas. So the engineers of the C&O Canal decided to come up with a different solution, and that was damming up the river so it could be navigated by canal boat in sections that the canal could not be built. Just downriver from us sits dam number 4, a river dam that backs up water to this river lock to make it deep, slow, and navigable for canal boats. This section of the canal is known as Big Slackwater. A canal boatman's journey through Big Slackwater begins at this river lock, which allows for the canal boat to exit the man-made ditch of the canal and enter the Potomac River. Now I want to point out here, if you look, there's still poles and wood left over from the original doors. So those metal poles actually run the louvers to let water into the canal, or into the lock. And then if you look down at the other end, you still have the same poles to run those louvers. So that's leftovers from the canal boat days, and they're still sunken into the dirt and still here. Yep. Big Slackwater was first opened in 1834 after the building of the original dam located about 3.5 miles downstream from where we are at now. To allow for the mules to traverse the landscape and pull the boats now navigating the flooded Potomac River, which is behind me here, a berm was created along the cliffs so that all the beasts and the boys that worked them traveled parallel to the river and pulled the boats. This portion of the towpath was built up by using rock walls and rubble, which you can see in the distance here, to create the platform for the mules. So along the cliffs that make up the riverside of Big Slackwater are many caves that go back into the ridge. Many of these caves have seen human exploration, as many of them are mapped out in the book called Caves of Maryland, which you can probably buy on Amazon or wherever you might be able to find these kinds of books. The one behind me is known as Little Howe Cave, and as we go by here, I'll try to point out some of these little crevices and things that we see. But this one here is called Little Howe Cave, and as you can see, there's a rope in it, so somebody's been up in it most likely recently. Along this part of the towpath is a little gem that requires you to divert off the trail for a little bit. And in this grotto here, which you can actually get to from a trail coming from the towpath over there. But to get to this little grotto, you go up that trail, you come over here, and in this grotto you can see How's Cave. Containing 2 large rooms within its structure, once you squeeze by the narrow entrance, this cave has an underground stream that emanates from its entrance, which is right here. Then it flows under the towpath and into the Potomac River, which you can see. If we go down here, you can see the little stream where it usually runs, which right now it's August, so it's not running at the moment. It's been pretty dry here lately. But it runs down through here, and then it goes into that culvert and goes under the towpath there. A smaller entrance here also emanates water that is actually the exit of a small stream that flows into a sinkhole about 700 yards north of here. And that is right here. And how do we know this? Well, the technique used by spelunkers called dye tracing involves dumping colorful dye into a water source, going into the underground system, and then looking for where the colored water comes out of. This way they can trace the source and flow a water system and follow a water system through a cave. So they actually dumped dye at the top here, and then it flowed down through here, and they seen it. So then they know that this is actually the exit of that small stream coming through the cliffs. Traveling the towpath downstream, you come to a little concrete bridge over the Downey Branch, which is behind me here. And the concrete bridge is actually right over there where all the fishermen are sitting. And that small stream contains beautiful sights such as waterfalls as it finds its way here to the Potomac River. It is the Downey Branch that powered the next point of interest. This is the canal access where we're at right now that we parked at today and where we technically started our journey off camera. The parking lot can be easily found by coordinates or telling your phone to give your directions to 7900 Avis Mill Road, Williamsport, Maryland 21795. This is McMahon's Mill. A mill has been located here since 1778, changing hands to many owners and families, including last names such as Shanks, Charles, Avis, Schaefer's, and Galloway's. You will hear this mill referred to as Charles Mill, but do not get it confused with the other Charles Mill, which sits at mile marker 108.13. That Charles Mill is in ruins and isn't nearly as pretty as this one. But that one is more commonly referred to as Charles Mill. This one is also referred to as Charles Mill, but actually is not that. Grist mills were important parts of colonial America in early 19th century America, as these giant machines were used to grind grain and corn into flour and feed for both human and animal consumption. When I say giant machines, I'm not kidding. Grist mills were a testament to human engineering, much like the C&O Canal, in which grinders, wheels, shellers, and other machinery were powered off a central shaft by pulleys and belts. This central shaft was typically powered by water power. Though later mills were powered by water turbines, early mills were powered by water wheels. In this area, the more common water wheel was an undershot water wheel, as it was turned by flowing water underneath it. However, the leverage achieved on an undershot water wheel was not maximized. A better design, but only achievable by having a water source higher than your grist mill, was the use of an overshot water wheel, which is what McMahon Mill here was blessed with. The Downey Branch comes down off the very ridges that causes the need for Big Slackwater, allowing for someone to build an overshot water-powered grist mill here at this location. They channeled the water over the water wheel, causing it to collect in the many compartments on the outside of the wheel, tipping the wheel with the weight of the water and continuously turning it to create power. This would then spin the shaft inside the building, in which pulleys and belts diverted this spinning motion to whatever tool or grinder that was needed to fulfill the needs of the gristmill customers. McMahon's mill produced flour, feed, and even plaster. Once it had a wooden water wheel, but in the 1920s, the now obsolete mill was converted to generate another type of working power, electricity. A steel wheel was installed, which is what you see today. However, the mill was finally closed in 1922 due to its location within a dangerous flood zone of the mighty Potomac River, which is not that far away from the mill. McMahon's mill gets its current name from William McMahon, who purchased the property in the 1960s, and he operated a campground here at one time. Just a short distance down from the old mill is this interesting old stone building. Now, this building is entirely gutted, but you can see a stone fireplace inside of it. Of all my years of traveling on the C&O Canal, I have never actually discovered what this building was. If anyone knows what this mysterious structure was, please leave a comment below. I would love to hear it. The majority of the original towpath along Big Slackwater no longer exists. Since the closing of the C&O Canal in the 1930s, maintenance of the infrastructure was extremely lacking. As the years slowly degraded the stone walls, the flooding from Hurricane Agnes in 1972 damaged the pathway along the flooded Potomac River, making it difficult to navigate by bike or by foot. The towpath was further damaged in flooding occurring in 1996, so much so that travelers of the C&O Canal National Park was diverted around back roads to bypass the bad part of the towpath. With money secured from the 2009 American Recovery and Reinvestment Act to help boost the economy during the Great Recession, construction began on a 2.7-mile stretch of the towpath along Big Slackwater, which a large portion of it you can see behind me here with the faker stone walls and the concrete, and you'll see as we travel over them what that looks like. Building concrete bridges between flat spots of what remained of the original towpath along the rocky cliffs of the river, the National Historic Park conducted the canal's largest construction contract since the canal was built. $19 million later, in October of 2012, the construction was complete and the towpath along Big Slackwater was once again open for human travel, providing beautiful scenery of the river, the cliffs, and the wildlife that blesses the C&O Canal back then, now, and into the future. As you travel this area, look around at the ferns growing in the cliffs, the wildflowers dotting the old and remaining parts of the towpath, and the many small cave entrances that dot the cliffs above you. You will also cross over small streams that make their way through the crevices of the rocks to empty just below you into the river. So along the C&O Canal, one of the trees that you find commonly is the pawpaw. The pawpaw tree likes marshy areas, wet, which the canal prism, now dried up, the ditch being dried up and no longer in use in growing trees, is a really good place for pawpaws to grow because it's low wetlands. And when you go by here, a lot of times you can find these pawpaw trees everywhere. And now, right now, it's actually September, beginning part of September, and pawpaws bear pawpaw fruit, which are now starting to become ripe. And you can see right there, that's 2 pawpaws. Bears love these things, and humans do too. They taste really good. They're kind of like, it kind of tastes like a cross between a banana and a strawberry or something like that. And they're in the mango family. They're the northernmost growing tropical fruit. But anyway, wanted to point out a pawpaw and what pawpaws look like. So, and like I said, you can find these little, a lot of times they're smaller trees all along the C&O Canal. At this point, if we were a canal boatman, we would be ending our trip on the flooded Potomac River, and we would be coming up on the entrance back into the canal prism, or the man-made ditch for the canal. Now, down over there, just a short distance, and we just crossed it, on the canal towpath is a concrete bridge, and that concrete bridge actually crosses over a water supply inlet for the canal. The flooding of the river by the use of a dam not only supplied a way for canal boats to navigate the river and bypass the steep cliffs, but it also served as a way to feed water into the man-made canal ditch to replenish its water supply. That was the purpose of this inlet. Though when the inlet lock, which is right here, we're actually standing on top of the entrance of that lock, and we'll see it here in a minute, and we're going to explore here in a minute. The inlet lock would also add water to the canal. This inlet allowed for the addition of water independently from the use of the river lock, just in case the river lock was in use or could not be opened to prevent damage during flooding. The inlet was designed with a pool of water and a gate to allow canal workers to regulate the water flow. When opened, the gate would allow water to pass down the ditch and into the canal below the river lock. So this is inlet or guard or river lock number 4, usually called a guard lock. And is named as such because it is the lock that allows water to flow downstream into the canal ditch here at dam number 4 and allow for water to enter into the canal ditch, and also canal boats as well that are exiting the slackwater on the river and coming back into the canal ditch or the canal prism. Not only did it allow boats to exit the slackwater of the river and enter the canal ditch, but it also allowed for water to be added to the canal to keep it running and flowing well. Today, to protect the canal and preserve it for future generations, Inlet Lock 4's entrance from the river has been concreted shut to prevent its destruction during devastating flooding events. And that's that concrete wall that you see on the other end there. At one time, this was open and was covered by a massive V-shaped door that allowed water and boats to enter and exit the river from the canal prism. A pivot bridge was built at this lock around 1835, most likely to allow wagon, horse, and mule traffic to cross over the large stone inlet lock, and that would have been on the top there, and that would have been the mule bridge. So where we seen a mule bridge to cross over to the left side of the boats going downriver, upriver, here you had to cross back over to the right side of the boats, so to be on the towpath again between the canal prism or the canal ditch and the river itself. So located just a short distance downstream from Inlet Lock 4 is the Big Slackwater boat ramp. Built for modern recreational purposes, this location not only allows access to the towpath for bikers and hikers, but also the access to Big Slackwater itself for recreational boats and fishing. As you can see in some of the video footage I've shot so far, there's a lot of boat activity here at Big Slackwater. A 30-foot boat ramp goes into the river here and allows water access for everything from kayaks to pontoon boats. As we travel along the canal prism or the ditch, the river is still dammed up on the other side of us. The very creation of this area, called Big Slackwater, is due to a man-made obstacle called Feeder Dam number 4. And that is what is behind me right here. As you can see, the water drops off immediately, and then it continues on as the Potomac River. The original dam built here in 1834 was not nearly as sophisticated as the one we see today. It was a crib dam made from rubble-filled wooden cribs that were covered with wooden planks. Unfortunately, this dam construction was prone to flood damage and leaked constantly after flooding damaged it. Because Big Slackwater was used to feed water into the canal ditch, it was very important to maintain a high level of water behind dam number 4. And water leaking through the dam caused canal navigation to be suspended below the dam, with the lack of water needed to float loaded canal boats because of the water leaking through the dam and not maintaining a height above it. This damage and inconsistency caused the canal company to contract to complete a new masonry dam made of strong stone in 1856. This new dam and its importance to the movement of goods and coal along the Potomac to the ports of Washington became a target of Confederate forces during the American Civil War. Early in the war in 1861, Confederate General Stonewall Jackson sent a force under the command of Turner Ashby to breach the dam, cutting off the water supply to the canal and crippling the commerce that traveled this man-made waterway on the Maryland side here. From the Virginia side, which is now West Virginia today, Confederate cannons fired onto the dam and onto Union forces located here on the Maryland side. Despite the bombardment, no major damage was made to the dam structure. However, a flood in 1877 tore a 200-foot hole in the masonry, and flooding in 1936 that finally struck the death blow to the C&O Canal also badly damaged the dam here. The present dam was built between 1906 and 1909 to operate the canal in its waning years. On the West Virginia side of the dam, you'll see a big building, stone building over there. That is an old power plant using water falling from the dam to generate electricity. According to the historic American engineering record, this plant used horizontal shaft turbines connected by a rope drive to horizontal shaft generators, and is the last commercially operated rope-driven plant in the United States. A source of flat water for recreational boating and an ecosystem for local wildlife, dam number 4 here was repaired and is now what it is today, creating this ecosystem, this recreation, and of course electricity. Near dam number 4 is the winch house, which is the white structure behind me here. This is one of 2 winch houses on the C&O Canal. It housed the machinery needed to drop a guard gate below it to secure the downstream section of the canal if floodwaters breach the inlet lock number 4 upstream and threaten the structures of the canal. And you'll see here in a minute, this actually sits above the canal prism and has the capability of dropping that gate below it. And we'll go underneath the winch house here. And as you can see, this is the canal prism coming down through here, and canal boats would travel down through here. Now, in case of flooding, workers would lower a gate that followed these grooves that you'll see behind me here in the wall to create a water barrier. And it would actually drop here, and then it would keep the water, if there was flood water upstream, from traveling down here and destroying the rest of the canal. Now, the towpath where the mules would travel would run on this platform that you see right here. That's actually the towpath itself. the guard gate here, as you can see, will create a choke point for the towpath and the canal ditch. So it's kind of narrow in here, just so they have that room to put that gate. Now, as the mules pulled the canal boats through here, and they would move outward away from the winch house as they would get away, so out of that choke point. And when they did that, the rope that connected the mule team with the canal boat would constantly rub up against the rock wall. And if you look right here, you can see the grooves in the walls where the rope would burn into the rocks from the mules pulling the canal boats through here. Those rope burns on the walls there show the bustling activity that occurred here along the C&O Canal over years of operation. Within a beautiful view of dam number 4, and with a nice traveling area for fishermen to get to the river with a trail here, is this concrete wasteware. Now, it looks like there was stone at one point, and then they probably redid it with concrete. But a wasteware is like a spillover for the canal ditch to allow surplus water to leave the canal in case of flooding, thunderstorms, or even heavy rains. The idea is to allow a relief of floodwaters that had the potential of destroying and overflowing the canal, and then overflowing over the towpath and destroying the towpath as well. These spillways, which exist along the canal every so many miles, help maintain the water level in the ditch. Usually they had some sort of gate here that they could pull the boards off, and they could open it up to drain it to work on the canal ditch, or they would board it back up and have the spillway so it only gets so high. And that's what a wasteware was designed to do. Located on the opposite side of the canal ditch from the towpath is Bergen Cave, or known more commonly as the Dam Number 4 Cave. It is a large cavern that stretches around 200 feet into the local limestone, called Conacajig limestone after the name of the local waterway, Conacajig. Conacajig means long winding stream in Lenape, or Delaware Native American language. If you want to explore this cave, a map exists, and a good description of what to see is located in the book called Caves of Maryland by William Franz and Dennis Stifler. See the sources in the description of this video for more. So we're going to go in and see how far we can go into it. So this is Dam Number 4 Cave. I unfortunately forgot my bright headlight, so I'm stuck with my phone light. But I'll try to point out a few things in a cave here. So in front of you is actually a column. It looks like maybe 2 columns. So it's when a stalactite and a stalagmite, which stalactites come from the ceiling, stalagmites come from the floor, and they actually meet in the center and they create a column. And it's mostly calcium limestone buildup coming down, and they eventually meet over thousands and thousands of years of actually growing from drips of water leaking calcium down off the ceiling. If you look at the ceiling here, you'll see strips of calcium in like little soda straws, which I'll try to zoom in. There are your soda straws, and there's your strips of calcium. Over here, you'll see also like a ribbon coming down. That's what is known as cave bacon. That is where calcium is flowing off of the ceiling. There's a little bit more right there as well. And we'll keep walking and see how far we can go. Luckily, the cave is dry. Usually there's water running through it. But we've had a dry spell here lately, and so it's very dry through here. And you can see where the mud on the ground was wet at one point. Now, if you come and explore dam number 4 cave on your own, that is fine. However, I will caution you to pay attention to what you're doing. A cave is a live cave, and it's growing constantly with different formations like your stalactites, stalagmites, your soda straws, your calcium build up on the walls. It's best not to touch any of those things. Here's an example of a stalactite forming and your runoff coming down. It takes years for that to happen. So if you break it off, you ruin it for future generations. So anytime you explore a cave, basically don't touch anything. Here is a gate, which I have seen before in here. It looks like it was put here to prevent people from going back any further. But it's open, and I don't know why it's open, because most of these caves are not necessarily open for the public once you get back so far. They try to prevent people from messing with the animals that live in here, like bats and such. But you know what? Let's walk through since it's already open. And you can walk through here pretty easily. So here's a different feature going off the main group here. And you go back in here and it takes a turn. Like I said, it goes in back here about 200 feet. And back in there it keeps getting lower and lower until you can't go any further. Now up in here is kind of a chimney type thing. And here's your flow stones and things. But there's a chimney up in that hole. You can go up and you can actually crawl up vertically in it. And if you look at the book for the Caves of Maryland, it shows a detailed map and all the different nooks and crannies that people have explored in this cave. So I'll take you back in here a little bit because the ceiling does narrow. Again, this usually has water flowing through it. I'll watch my head here so I don't hurt myself nor hurt the cave. Again, it's opening up. Looks like there's a rope. Somebody exploring something somewhere along the line up in that hole there. More flow stones. More flow stones. The area of dam number 4 in Big Slackwater is a combination of natural beauty of caves, animals, and botanical sites, but also human technological marvels like dams, inlet locks, power stations, and guard gates. This area is a great example of the whole C&O Canal National Historic Park, where this combination consumes and makes up the whole park. Thank you for watching this video. If you like what you saw, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Remember, these stories are ours, and it is our duty to keep these stories alive. See you next time as I explore What in the History.